Hi, I'm Old Norse specialist Dr. Jackson Crawford. Because a study of Old Norse involves serious study of the modern Scandinavian languages, after all, you need access to the resources written about Old Norse in those languages, and it helps to have the ability to kind of triangulate information from languages that people actually speak today. I also have quite an interest in Norwegian, and I have a special interest in Norwegian Nynorsk, which is the less used norm for writing modern Norwegian. Now, I have discussed in a much older video why there came to be two different written norms for Norwegian. The majority form today called Bokmål, and the minority form today called Nynorsk. And I don't want to retread that ground exactly because that video is quite old, but I still think covers the subject well. What I want to do in this video is maybe get going with a little bit of a series talking about some particular places where Bokmål and Nynorsk are different and why they're different. So one of the most noticeable places where Bokmål and Nynorsk differ is the pronouns. So I in Norwegian Bokmål is jeg, whereas in Nynorsk it is eg. Now, this reflects a difference between West Norse and East Norse. And the line between West Norse and East Norse does not exactly coincide with the Norwegian-Swedish border the way people sometimes present it as. Some Eastern Norwegian dialects are more East Norse than West Norse in terms of their features. But there's no complete perfect separation between West Norse and East Norse, especially in the diphthongs. So where Norwegian has stein and Swedish has sten, Norwegian has, at least Norwegian Nynorsk has heim, and Swedish is hem. What you're seeing is the Old West Norse diphthong ei, the Old East Norse monophthong e. But there are dialects across the Swedish border that have diphthongs. There are dialects across the Norwegian border that have monophthongs. And the border between West and East Norse is kind of perforated there. But in general, Eastern varieties of Scandinavian have forms of the word for I, like I, me, that begin with ja, from breaking. What's happened is the Proto-Norse form eka, that a broke, so-called the e, and the stress syllable to ya, making yak before the a dropped out. This is similar to the change in heart, where Proto-Germanic herta gives English heart, but Old Norse hjarta with breaking. In West Norse, the a dropped without breaking the e. So probably the a just dropped before it could have broken the e. And so we actually see this difference already in very early inscriptions, this difference between, for example, jak in Old Swedish and ek in Old Icelandic. So what you're seeing there is then Western dialects that have forms that end from ek. This may be egg, it may be it may be e. There's a lot of different forms this takes. And Eastern dialects with forms that are broken, that start with ja. Jeg is a little bit of a writing pronunciation based on the Danish. Eastern Norwegian dialects tend to natively have a form more like ye, but by now most speakers of Norwegian say jeg. This is one thing that's kind of interesting and different about talking about Norwegian today versus so many of the resources that we have about the language which were written in the 19th and early 20th century. Now, Bokmål, like based on the spoken language based on the written language, is actually a very dominant spoken language. And, you know, you can bemoan that, you can say, well, this isn't a real dialect or something, but it is real because it's people's real spoken language today, right? In spite of having an affection for Nynorsk, I don't think that, there's something like evil about Bokmål, or, I don't think that there's any value in saying that it's a less, quote unquote, pure form of Norwegian, because it's the form of Norwegian that most Norwegians recognize as like the most, quote unquote, normal Norwegian. So I'm trying to leave those value judgments aside. come back and talk about a few more really diagnostically different pronoun forms in the two varieties of Norwegian after a quick word from my friends and partners from Grimfrost. So the plural form of I is we, and the Bokmål form is vi, and the Nynorsk standard allows you a choice between two things, vi and me. Now me is kind of interesting. That m actually comes from the end of the first person plural verb in Old Norse. So for example, if we say we are in Old Norse, it's ver erum, all right? Or since Old Norse is pretty free word order, we can say erum ver. Now, Old Norse very often has the verb before the subject. So erum ver is not an unusual thing to see. Or komum ver, or forum ver, or whatever. And speakers apparently reinterpret the m from the end of the verb as the beginning of the pronoun, saying something in a transitional phase like eru mer, or foru mer. And it is from that mer, from the wrong analysis of where the verb ending is versus where the pronoun is, originally wrong, but later becoming legitimately part of a lot of dialects, that we get this form me, which coincidentally is the same as the word we in Finnish, but that's just a coincidence. I've always kind of had an affection for me because it's, it's a very distinctly dialectal form. I kind of like that it's got that cool hidden feature of Old Norse morphology in it. I would say that this is kind of on their tree. You still see people who use it, but probably fewer and fewer. Although it was at least once quite characteristic of most of the dialects of the interior and many of the dialects of the West. Arguably, vi is really a Danishism in Bokmål or Nynorsk. You would expect the vowel there to be an e rather than an I, based on Old West Norse ver. It is Old East Norse vir that gives us vi in Swedish or Danish, but probably that Old East Norse vir to vi spread naturally too. So I don't think there's any grounds to say that it's purely a Danishism. I don't believe there's any dialects that say ve, although there may be. Another really distinctive one is the form for the plural you. This word tends to be kind of unstable in Germanic languages. It's surprisingly different between even the three standardized Germanic languages, right? We have Swedish ni and and we have Danish I and and we have Norwegian Bokmål, dere, and Norwegian Nynorsk, de duk, or dokker. That's been admitted into the written norm. It's been kind of gaining ground in spoken dialects in areas where Nynorsk is written. Now, in Old Norse, you would learn or ther as the nominative form, and uther as the accusative or dative form. The language that is closest to preserving something like that is Danish, with, again, Old East Norse being continued as Danish i. In Swedish ni, we have that n that's actually originally from the second person plural verb form that's gotten attached to the start of the pronoun, right? So you have Old East Norse like kolmen I, y'all come, you guys come, being reanalyzed as kolmi ni, with the n not being part of the verb but being part of the pronoun now. Something similar has happened in Norwegian Nynorsk, where d and dik actually come from the dual. Right, so this is thit and ikur in Old Norse, or compare modern Icelandic thith and ikur in the same meaning, although now not dual but plural like it is in modern Norwegian. Old West Norse tends to, over time, develop toward using the dual for the regular plural, and that's the case in Icelandic today, it's the case in Faroese today, and d and dik continue the dual from Old Norse too, instead of the plural. Dokker comes from the vowel in okker, us two, being spread to the forms of the second person plural as well. Ikur, becoming by analogy okur. And then this D creeps down from originally it was just in the nominative, and that's also from false analysis of the verb ending versus the pronoun beginning. Because in Old West Norse, the second person plural verb ends in ed, so eruth, komið, that's reanalyzed by speakers as like eru, there, komið, there, and then that thorn becomes a D in the continental languages, and then the D spreads down to the object form too. So it's kind of surprising just how fluid, how changeable the second person plural forms are. But I mean, it's true in English too, right? In English, we abandoned the distinction between singular and plural you, but now speakers feel the lack of that plural you, and you know, in American English, y'all is spreading, you guys in some areas, you know, yous in some areas. There's all kinds of different variants. People kind of feel the lack of it, but it's surprisingly unstable, the word for you, plural, and I'm not sure if there's a quote-unquote reason why that should be, but it certainly is. Well, I hope that's been something of a half interesting look at some pronouns and the different standards of written Norwegian for you. I hope that if you enjoy this kind of content, you'll consider supporting the channel on Patreon. That is what keeps all this work going. I also have translations of many of the main sources of Norse myths and sagas. I teach some classes on Zoom about Norse language and myth. I'll be offering new sessions of that starting in the summer. I'm in the middle of a session right now. And there is an Amazon shop where you can buy my books or books that I recommend, or my lovely fiance's preferred hair products and other things like that. So check it out if you haven't yet. Small commissions help the channel. And for now, from beautiful Colorado, thank you so much, and all the best.